Listen, guys, we've not got long left, and I want to give some time to the last person we're going to talk about tonight, because I know that the reaction in the boxing world, the people I know in the boxing world,
Vast.
were just shocked and so sad to hear last week that former British heavyweight champion Gary Mason died in a cycling accident at the age of 48. Let's look at his record. 1 defeat in 38 professional fights, 34 of those were knockouts. Nearly beat Lennox Lewis in 1991. Let's get your memories.
And you said it was so sad, and Steve was much closer to him than me, so I'll let him take over here. But we were at a press conference this morning for Derek Chisora. We've already mentioned that, and we were asking around as to when the funeral might be, and just talking about him generally. And within a couple of sentences of everybody I spoke to, they were laughing, and that's great credit to the man.
It was, and we'll talk about the joking first, but let's talk about the Lennox Lewis fight. In that particular fight, there were 2 judges scoring, and the referee was scoring. After 6 rounds, the 2 judges had it even, and the referee Larry O'Connell had Gary in front. Now Lennox was unbeaten, would go on to make 100 million, the best heavyweight of his generation, and the referee at the end of the 6th round went over to Gary's corner. Gary was cut on his left eye. His right eye was completely closed. Now this was the same eye that had kept him out of the ring for over a year earlier, because he'd had damaged retina. So his right eye's closed, couldn't see a thing, and Larry O'Connor went over to stop it, and a cuts man called Denny Mancini, who was great friends with Gary and was in the corner, he mouthed, and obviously I'll say it, he mouthed, "Don't, it's his living." It was one of the all-time great dramatic moments. Gary went out in the 7th round. I may choke up here, so you must take over, Mickey, if that happens. He went out in the 7th round and he charged at Lennox for 44 seconds, and then he was just out of steam, and Lennox just managed to catch him. Referee stepped in. But then after that, it got interesting, because that's when he became... I mean, I've got to tell you, there isn't a thing he didn't do. For a moment, he was promoting music, and he was known, and he called me up one day, said, "Bunce, I've got Stockwell's M&M." That was his white rapper. Okay, then he was in charge of hand drumming, which he wanted to take to the nation. That was a couple of years ago. He introduced arm wrestling to Sky TV. He was Sky's first ever boxing pundit, and he was brilliant, but he swore once on air, and they got rid of him, and there was a hidden agenda, but he's... finest ever feat was in 1991, 6 months after he lost his licence because of the detached retina, and 2 weeks after he'd managed to have £10,000 given to him at a benefit evening. Now, he was never rich, Gary. In fact, he was mostly skint. So he got 10 grand, and then 2 weeks after he got 10 grand at a benefit evening, Michael Watson suffered an injury in the Chris Eubank fight. Now, Gary and Michael had made their debut on the same night at the Royal Albert Hall, and I may get stuffed there, son. Gary goes
You'll be fine. Deep breath.
Gary goes to the hospital 2 weeks after he's got this 10 grand. He goes in to see Mrs. Watson, and I was in the cubicle, and we go and we stand by Michael's bed. And when he left there that night, he'd given Mrs. Watson the 10 grand. And he swore to me, and he did swear, he said, "You can never, ever write about that." And he could have added, "until I die on a bike at 6 o'clock in the morning," which in itself is comical if you knew Gary. So he was a great man, and he truly was. Great man.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, as you say, the warmth that's come from people who knew him and people who didn't know him so well, and and I know people who were commentating on his fights right at the very start of his career. But it was an old-fashioned boxing story. It's a sad boxing story, but in a way, it's old as boxing itself is.
And whatever he was doing that morning, wherever he was going, you know that he was going somewhere to try something different,
something crazy.
Yeah. Sounds like he was a lovely man. I wish I'd met him, because it was one of the real characters of boxing. Listen, guys.